This is Messi Can't Stop Her, and I am your host, Judith Cambia Obatasa, JKO. Welcome to this episode of Messi Can't Stop Her, the podcast where we share the stories of women's resilience through chaos, crisis, and the challenges of life. We started a new series on domestic violence, where we're sharing the different types of domestic violence. And we'll also share the stories of people who have directly or indirectly been impacted by domestic violence. We'll also be sharing conversations with experts in domestic violence support services, either housing, shelters, psychotherapists, all of that. Due to this series that we started, the person that we have on today's episode reached out to me because she has a story to share. Today, we have Andrea Henning. Andrea, welcome. Thank you for being courageous to step up to the podium to tell the world how domestic violence has impacted you and how they can play a role in changing the trajectory of domestic violence in our world. Welcome, Andrea.
Thank you for having me.
Tell us why you reached out to me.
Last week, I received a letter from the Department of Corrections here in Michigan stating that the offender who murdered my sister would be up for parole hearing on June 9th this year. As the end of his sentence has come, he's served his time, and now the board must decide whether to release him or hold him.
So you said the offender who murdered your sister. And just to be clear, this happened 22 years ago?
Correct.
How old was your sister?
Nicole was 17 years old.
And what was the relationship she had with this offender?
A new relationship as boyfriend and girlfriend.
Mm-hmm. So he was her boyfriend. So can you just tell us what happened?
This was month 4 of their dating. And the last night I saw her was a day before she was murdered. And that conversation while we were getting ready for the day was, she thinks it's time to move on and she's going to let him know tonight after their outing with friends. She was ready to find somebody closer to her age. And she made the comments that he's a little too controlling and possessive. And it's really stressful for her. So the best thing she thought to do was move on.
So when you say she wanted someone closer to her age, what was the age difference between Nicole and this individual?
We were told, my family and I, that he was 20 years old. Later, once he was arrested, we found out he was closer to being 23.
When you say you were told, was that Nicole told you that he was 20 years old?
Yes.
Sorry?
Just so nobody would be so alarmed that she was dating somebody so much older. And this is what she told our family.
Okay. So she wanted to break off a 4-month relationship. Do you know why? Apart from the fact that he was controlling, did she tell you other details, or did you notice something about her when she was in that relationship?
She was becoming more risky with behavior. So there was probably more times than I can count that she wanted to be with him and these older people that they were around. And those people would like to drink and go to bars. He was basically, in my mind at that time, I thought he was the guy from the other side of the tracks.
Can you just break that down a little? Because some people are listening to this podcast from different parts of the world.
Oh.
And even some people that are even in North America may not know what you mean when you say different side of the tracks. Can you just paint the picture so that we can be in this situation, even though we were not there, just from your words?
He was rough around the edges. He looked like he came from a different type of lifestyle than my sister and I were raised in.
Mm-hmm.
My father was a homicide detective at the time, working in our city with the FBI. Mm-hmm. My mother was a nurse at a local hospital, and we did not see signs of abuse, verbally or physically, when we were around her or when she brought him around the home.
Mm-hmm.
There was I didn't think they were well matched. He seemed to like a lifestyle that we weren't accustomed to. Maybe being from the wrong side of town, or not exactly a gang member, but a rough crowd was his type of crowd to hang with.
Okay. When you say rough crowd, what can you describe a little bit more about what made the crowd rough? Is it because they were very loud or noisy, or, when you get worried, when as a sister or as a friend or a family member or a parent, and you get worried about your child, and when you say the person is a part of a rough crowd, what do you mean? Can you give us some examples of the things that your family or yourself saw in his interactions, or the kind of people he hung out with, that got you worried about the fact that your sister was with him?
Just, he looked like he might have had friends who were gang members. He liked to go out and party late at night. So, those are things we don't do in our family. Those are things that we weren't accustomed to. A different type of crowd. Prior to meeting him, she was in Bible studies. She was in Bible groups, going to school. This individual at 20 years old was not in college or holding a full-time job.
Oh. So when she started the relationship, she stopped doing those things that she did, like going to Bible study. Within 4 months, she changed.
Mm-hmm.
What are the other changes you noticed in her? Because she said he was very controlling. Did you see any signs of his being controlling in any way? Maybe he always called her several times a day when she was with you. Or did you see anything that gave you any indication that there was something not quite right, apart from the fact that he was from the other side of the tracks?
I thought that for her having a new relationship, she didn't talk much about him, and she did not bring him around much. So that kind of gave me the impression that maybe she wasn't happy with him.
Okay. So prior to the relationship with this person, had she had other relationships that she was freer with the family about?
Yes. Yep.
Take us back to the day she told you that she was going to go and tell him that she no longer wanted the relationship. You said in the morning when you were about to start your day, she mentioned this to you.
Yes.
And then the next time you heard about your sister was when the cops came. So tell us from the moment. So you didn't see your sister all through that day, and then the next thing was the police. Can you walk us through that day? When the police came, what did they say to you? And just give us a little snapshot into that day.
Yep. It was September 25th, 1999. We were getting ready together like sisters do, hair and makeup, and trying to share the bathroom at the same time to get out the door on time. And I asked her what she was doing that day, and she said she would be with him, and that it's on her mind to break up with him for, the controlling, the possession, everything else that is going on. She wasn't really open with it. And I told her, was that a good idea to do? And she said, yes, he was just too controlling and possessive. She couldn't hang around with friends that she had before him. She couldn't talk to guy friends that she had before him. He told her what to wear, how to dress, where to go, how he liked her to look. And I guess it was just too much pressure for her at 17. So I told her good luck and I would see her tomorrow because the next day was a baptism planned for my 2-year-old sister. I went on my day with my then boyfriend. She went on her day, and it was a friends gathering who were all staying the night at one house to watch a boxing match on pay-per-view back then. That's where you pay for your cable show to be aired. And it was a big deal. They were all going to be there, about 8 people. They were going to order in food and do whatever kind of socializing, whatever kind of party they were going to have. We are awoken at 6 a.m. that next day by the chief of police, who at this time is my father's boss because he's a homicide detective himself. He's knocking on the door telling my father that there's been a horrible accident and he needs to go with him right now.
So your daddy now left with the chief of police. So the chain of events unfolded. Give us the story.
From there, I do not know what happened while my dad was with his boss.
Mm-hmm.
But he was taken directly to the hospital where she was at. In the middle of the night, maybe it was 3 a.m, 4 a.m, they started arguing because I'm pretty sure she had told him that this was their last day together as a couple. And I don't know how that conversation unfolded, obviously, but at some point they got loud enough for the other people to hear.
Mm-hmm.
And before somebody could intervene, gunshots were heard from other rooms in the house.
Mm-hmm.
And I think 3 gunshots, but one had hit her intentionally where he placed it was where he ended her life. The last thing they heard in that house was, if I can't have you, no one else will. They hear a gunshot and they hear somebody scream, "Oh my God." And everyone comes running down.
So you said something. You said 3 shots were fired. And the one that killed your sister, or the one that hit her, was intentionally placed where it will be sure to harm her. Are you able to tell us what he did with that one shot? Where did he shoot her?
The first shot or 2, apparently there was a struggle and she was fighting him.
Mm-hmm.
But the first shot missed and hit a wall. The second shot hit the couch. The third shot, as she was trying to defend herself on the couch with her legs in the air, trying to fight him off, he placed right in her vagina and shot her.
Shot her through the vagina.
Correct. Wow. And it traveled through her body and exited out of her back.
It exited. The bullet exited. Yes. Wow. Oh my goodness. I'm so sorry that I had to retell that story. So your dad had to go and see this.
When my dad arrived, they had just given up working on her for the last hour. She did not have her identification immediately on her. So it took a while to secure the scene at the place of the shooting. It took a while to get all of the witnesses in the house in separate cars. I guess they were looking for the gun in the backyard. Nobody had a cell phone. And somebody ran down the street to use a payphone at that time to call the police. So they are not exactly sure how much time was taken with her lying there bleeding out before the police call was made. When my dad reached the hospital, the doctors had said they worked on reviving her for nearly an hour. and there was nothing to save.
So by the time your daddy got there, he went to the hospital and all of that. And then you had to go through the process of going to court with this person.
Yep.
And he went to jail. How long was he supposed to spend how much time was he meant to spend in jail for what he did?
He was sentenced to a second-degree murder and received 20 years for that here in the state of Michigan.
So he was sentenced for 20 years. So he's been in jail for 20 years now.
He's been in a high max security prison, I believe, for 22 years, because they added on 2 years for him having unregistered weapon that he committed the crime with.
Wow. And when you were talking to me about this, you gave me an idea of what it did to your family. Apart from the fact that you had to go through the motion of the court case. So you had to go to court and sit in through the process and then got him. So you reached out to me because of the impact on your family and the next steps that's going to take place now that he spent 22 years in jail.
Right.
So before we go to the 22 years in jail and the next steps, your sister was your closest sibling, according to what you told me.
Yep. We were 18 months apart, and I had not spent time without her prior to then.
Yeah. And you said something about how your dad is a homicide detective and his daughter died by a homicide.
Correct.
What was the impact of your sister's passing on your family? So talk about your father, your mom, and yourself.
With my father, there's a shell of a man I used to know.
Okay, good.
He struggles the most. Being a police officer of almost 40 years now, closer to 50 maybe, he has once said during grief counseling that his greatest failure was that he could not protect his own daughter. Yeah, he failed to protect his own daughter.
Oh, sorry.
And my dad was always our hero. He still is. He treated us like princesses. We were not ever yelled at or spanked or raised a hand to by our father. So it's really shocking that she stood for any kind of mistreatment from a man that she was dating.
That's the challenge of domestic violence. One of the things that is said about domestic violence is that it's not a respecter of status. Now we know that it's not even a respecter of upbringing, because your sister was not raised in domestic violence. She was raised as a cherished daughter of a man who cherishes his wife and children. So she never saw abuse, but yet her life succumbed to abuse. And that's why we're talking about it here. If you're a listener, we say, oh, when we raise our children right, then we'll protect them from these kind of things. But from what Andrea is telling us, it's not just about us raising our children right. It's about each and every one of us saying no to the perpetration of domestic violence. It's about each and every one of us standing up against this pandemic. It's about each and every one of us saying that those who refuse to change and who harm people should pay for what they've done. Because when we see one person pay, then the next person isn't going to be that foolish to want to go through the same experience. So you said your dad kind of blames himself in a way that he could not protect his own child. I'm a mom of 5 children. My firstborn is a twin, and one of my twins went to heaven a few months after she was born. Till today, I still feel the loss of my baby. But I did not have 17 years of memories with my daughter. I had a few months, about 2.5 months. I cannot imagine what it is to lose a child with 17 years of memory. Tell me how your sister's passing has impacted your mom.
My mom was inconsolable for the first 10 years. Any mention of somebody with the name Nicole, anybody asking how she was, would just send her into hysterics. I would hear her cry in the shower, wailing out of sorrow, and there's nothing I can do. She fell into a depression where she doesn't sleep. She doesn't have a regulated sleep schedule. She still mourns her almost every day, like it's fresh. If she did not have me, I'm pretty sure she would have given up on life by now.
Wow. That just tells us a little bit more about how domestic violence is insidious. It moves beyond just the two people, the abuser and the victim. Everyone is a victim. This family is a victim. Everyone related to Nicole is a victim. Everyone who is her friend is a victim. Our world is a victim because this person cost us her goodness, all that she could have brought to the table on earth. We never got to experience because her life was cut short. So you are her closest sibling, and you are the one who has had to support your parents. How has this loss impacted you?
I would say that I still have a lot of anger for what this monster did. He robbed our family of so many memories that were sure to come with children. As you know, as a parent, the milestones, the 18th birthday, the graduations, the marriages that parents get to experience with their young children, the birthdays, anniversaries, children. I don't have any nieces or nephews from her. We've missed out on so much because he could not control his rage. He could not control his actions. And I believe all of those are fueled by an evil that cannot be rehabilitated. And it's caused a lot of trauma. I've done counseling. I find it hard to trust men. I am married and I have 4 beautiful boys. And I don't see how anyone in this world would want to hurt a woman or a female or even a man so grossly and intentionally. And as my children have come of age to her in college, I've let them know, how she died and what kind of circumstances led to her death. And I am really sure that my boys would never, ever behave in this way with a partner. This is such a preventable death, a preventable type of violence. If men didn't raise their hands and their fists or use weapons, we wouldn't have so many abused and battered women and children.
So now that it's 22 years and the state is sending you an email or a letter asking what are they asking you to do?
They are strongly encouraging my family and I to make statements at this parole hearing that he will have on June 9th.
Okay, so there's a parole hearing to determine if you'll be set free.
Correct.
And so you came on Mercy Can't Stop Her because you really want the world to hear what happened to Nicole. What do you plan to do regarding that parole hearing?
I'm writing a letter that will let the parole board know how much we have lost and how much we have suffered at the actions of his hands. And I believe that our community won't be safe with people like him who are pardoned for a murder they committed 20 some years ago. He silenced my sister forever. It's permanent. She doesn't get a choice. She doesn't get another chance. Why should he?
Yeah. Are people who are not related to you, are they able to support your campaign for the parole hearing?
Yes. I've had people in the field tell me that I need to make noise and I need to gather support from family, from friends, from our community who protest his release because of his crime. I have looked up advocates and activists for domestic violence, and that's how I came across Mercy Can't Stop Her. I have contacted shelters asking for advocates, and it's an uncharted territory with the release of a prisoner who committed murder. In his case, he didn't get a life sentence because it was not premeditated. He received second degree, and that led him in our state to 20 years. And I'm not ready to settle for that.
So what can anybody who is listening to this episode of Mercy Can't Stop Her that will air just before the 9th, I believe, what can they do to support you?
They can help by writing letters of protest in the release of Mr. Villarreal. They can write letters of experiences they might have had with their own situation and how they believe it's unjust or unfair.
Okay. So Andrea will give me all the information where you can send the letters to. And in the show notes, I will have the links, the emails, or the locations for you. Please check out the show notes of this episode to support Andrea's campaign to get justice for her sister. The truth is that it's most painful because Nicole was only 17. She did not even have the opportunity to have a child. So there's no more Nicole if we are silent about Nicole's passing. And because Nicole is not here to speak for herself, Andrea and her family and anyone else who will step up will become a voice for Nicole. I have felt your pain and I've listened to you. Could you please talk to those young girls who are in relationships? Because now you're a mom of 4, right, and your oldest 2, I think, are adults. So could you please just say a word to a child, a young lady who is in a relationship like your sister was? And if you could redo that day again, what would you tell her?
First, I'd like to let girls know that love is respect. It is not name calling. It is not swearing and raising your voice. It is not a fist being thrown in the air towards you or onto your furniture and walls. It is not angry and evil, for sure. If you're feeling scared and intimidated with your partner, that's not love. That is not a place for you.
Thank you so much, Andrea. And one thing is that domestic violence experts will tell us that the most dangerous time for a woman is when she wants to leave or when she has left. So when you want to end a relationship with someone who makes you scared, someone who controls you, you feel worried about the relationship because of the way they behave, it's not the time to go to places with them. You don't go to a place and say, I'm done with you there, because you're on their territory. You're on their turf. So
I would have told my sister that maybe she needs to do this over the phone or in person with other people around.
Mm-hmm.
And that would have changed a lot, I believe. She might still be here if he did not have access to her during that breakup.
Yes. There you have it. This is Nicole's story. And it's not just the story of Nicole, it's the story of Andrea, Nicole's mom, Nicole's sister, Nicole's dad. This has impacted his career as a police officer. It's impacting the relationship Andrea has with her husband and her boys. It's impacting Nicole's mom. Life has never been the same in the last 22 years since Nicole was wickedly and tragically taken out from earth. So if you're listening to this podcast today, please check the show notes and send a letter of support so that Nicole's voice will not be silenced. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Mercy Can't Stop Her. We'll continue the conversation on domestic violence in our next episodes. Domestic violence is no good, and we all should fight against it. Because when we do that, mercy can't stop us. Take care and see you next time.